Okay, season 2. Here we go. Let's go, girls. Let's go, ghouls.
Welcome to Jaunty Haunts, the podcast about all things supernatural. After 30 years of keeping a secret, I'm finally ready to share with the world that I see ghosts. Yep, I've been having conversations with the other side while trying to keep up appearances. This podcast is all about getting spooky and connecting with others who might also sense, see, or feel things beyond the ordinary. We'll swap true tales of the seen and unseen, and maybe even laugh about the weird stuff we've experienced. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, come join me as we explore the paranormal. Let's connect, share, and maybe feel a little less crazy together. Welcome to Jaunty Haunts.
Welcome back, ghoul friends, to Jaunty Haunts Season 2. You made it through the veil once again, and oh, do we have some spectral secrets to unravel this time around. Our first episode this season is entitled Divination. Tonight, we peer into the mists of fate, tracing the ancient art of divination. Across centuries, cultures, and candlelit chambers, humanity has sought glimpses of the unknown, reading signs in the stars, the shuffle of cards, the flight of birds, and even the way bones scatter upon the ground. But how much truth lies in these practices? Were they mere superstition, or did our ancestors know something we've long forgotten? And are we onto something with the ways we're trying to put these back into practice today? From the oracles of ancient Greece whispering prophecies in smoke-filled temples to medieval scryers staring into mirrors and pools of water, divination has guided rulers and common folk alike. Tea leaves, tarot, palmistry, rune casting, pendulums, and even modern-day AI readings, each with its own cryptic language, each promising a sliver of foresight. But just how accurate are these methods? Are they windows into fate, or reflections of our deepest desires? Tonight, we'll explore divination's tangled history, the science, or lack thereof, behind it, and the ways it's still practiced today. So, light your candles, shuffle your deck, and step beyond the threshold with me. The spirits are waiting, and so is the truth. Or at least our interpretation of it, right? The tale you are about to hear is more than just a story. It is a thread woven into the fabric of my family, passed down through generations. Whispers of a woman, my great-great-great-grandmother, who had the gift of sight. They say she saw beyond the veil of time, her visions saving lives when fate teetered on the edge of darkness. Tonight, we bring such legend to life. A chilling, breathless night when a premonition met the difference between life and death. Keep in mind, this is a fictional story I have written from the inspiration of the stories told to me by my grandmother about this ancestor. I thought it'd be fun to bring some family folklore to life. So, please enjoy. The CASPER rating of this episode is 2.5. In the dead of night, beneath a full moon the color of old blood, Sarah jolted awake, breathless. A vision had gripped her, a terrible, undeniable truth. She saw Eloise, pale and limp, crimson seeping through the sheets. A wail split the darkness, new life born even as another faded away.
No, not Eloise. I have to stop this. I have to.
She tore from her bed and into the cold night, her bare feet pounding against the dirt path. The wind clawed at her hair, the full moon glaring down like an unblinking eye.
Dr. Black, please. Please be awake. Dr. Black, please. Be awake, please. Dr. Black. Doctor, wake up.
Who in God's name? Sarah? Do you have any idea what time it is?
Eloise is dying. Right now, the baby's coming and she's bleeding out. We have minutes, maybe less. If we don't go now, she's gone.
How do you know this? Have you come from her? How do you know this?
I've seen it in a dream. We must go now.
Damn it all. If you're wrong about this...
I'm not.
Hooves pounded against the dirt, the creaking of the carriage as Sarah and Dr. Black rode through the night, urgency thick in the air. The house loomed ahead, candlelight flickering from a single window. Inside, a scream tore through the night. The door burst open, more screaming, the rustling of fabric, the clatter of metal instruments. "Sarah! Help me!"
Hold on, Eloise. We're here. Just hold on.
A heartbeat slowly fading, the rustling quickening as Dr. Black is working urgently.
Sarah, press here, hard. We need to stop the bleeding.
Sarah presses a cloth into her flesh. The heartbeat falters, silence. Then, a newborn's cry. "My baby!"
You're both safe. You're both safe. You're safe.
A deep breath, the distant call of the wind, the night exhales, the danger is past. The vision had not been a death sentence, but a warning. And because Sarah ran, because she believed, because she knew, Eloise and her baby would both see the sunrise. Hey listeners, I just want to welcome you back to the show. I know I took a few weeks off there, more than a few, but I had to take some time and really rest and reset and get inspired to sift through themes, ideas, and a lot of guests that were excited to share their stories and collaborate to put something awesome together for season 2. It's going to be a little different than the first season. I've been able to connect with so many cool people and creators, and I am so excited for you guys to hear their personal stories and beliefs and insight and opinions about the paranormal. So, of course, we're going to be having a similar format of a fun, produced, personal story, sort of audio journey, but we're also going to have a lot of interviews this season, a lot of one-on-one question and answer with other people in the paranormal community, whether they are scientists, TV hosts, stay-at-home moms who are also mediums, holistic healers and wellness coaches, demon hunters, ghost hunters and investigators, witches and magic practitioners, as well as a lot of quote-unquote normal people, people who, just like you, maybe have, lived a relatively normal life, but have something unexplainable that they wanted to come on the show and share, and I can't wait to hear it. So anyway, thank you so much for coming along on the ride. If you haven't listened to season 1 yet, and you feel like it, you should definitely, just to get a better sense of, kind of who I am and some of the other awesome guests we've had on the show. But also, if you're new here, hey, I'm Courtney, and as the intro stated, I see ghosts. I've seen them since I was really little. I felt afraid to be open and honest about that for a long time, and with this podcast and a lot of therapy, I've come to feel safe to be my full self, and I started talking very openly about this last October of 2024. So it's been about 6 months since starting the pod, and I feel so grateful to have this awesome community where, like I always say, we can all feel a little less crazy together. So if you want to be on the show, if you have a story, if you have a friend or a family member who has a story that they might want to share or they'd be cool with you sharing, please, as always, reach out to us at jauntyhaunts@gmail.com or on Instagram at jauntyhauntspod or on TikTok at jauntyhauntspod or on YouTube at jauntyhaunts podcast. The other thing I've been working on the off time of the podcast has been the mini-series on TikTok and YouTube called Jaunty Haunts NYC. It's on the same pages that I put everything else out at, but I've basically been touring historically haunted places in New York, or just places that I have seen ghosts, and doing research on the historical significance and the land and area to see maybe who the ghosts were or are, and what these hauntings could be from. So that's been a really fun little side project. So if you haven't yet, please go check out that on the TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube page. Anyway, y'all, welcome to Season 2. I'm so excited to have you. Please tell a friend. Now, let's jump in to Season 2, Episode 1, Divination. Okay, well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed my little audio story inspired by the lore of my great ancestor. My mother's mother, my grandma, would talk constantly about how the reason we can see ghosts and spirit and we have dreams and they come true and we have, premonitions and is because it runs in our family. That's what I was always told since I was young. And that basically my ancestor in the story would frequently be having dreams and premonitions that would ultimately come true, or as I said, kind of be a warning sign. And she would run to the town doctor to wake him up, run to the person in need, and inevitably find the person in, basically a health emergency and would help save them. She was referred to as the town psychic, and everybody would come to her for her insight, for questions, and, supposedly she was very tapped into the other side. So does that have to do exactly with divination? Maybe not. Maybe it's something else. I feel like divination is more about the tools we use, right? It's divination being a way to look into this. Let me just read the actual definition of divination. Okay, so divination, the definition is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. So, hey, maybe what my grandma did was divination, using her dreams and her premonitions as a way of divining the future and the unknown. But I want to talk about more contemporary and historical ways of divination, specifically how oversaturated the market is today, if that makes sense. I feel like everyone and their sister can read tarot cards these days, which on one hand is great. I do it, and I'm not an expert, but I can't tell you the amount of peace and comfort it can bring in certain situations where I feel like I don't really know what to do, kind of having this unbiased guidance on how to tackle a situation that maybe I otherwise wouldn't be sure of how to tackle. It's also just hella fun, right? Especially when you have a friend who has a new romantic interest in their life and they want to know, is he the one? Or, especially when the answer from the cards is no, it's like, okay, how do you, the person who is starting this new relationship, navigate that, right? What choices do you make? And are these readings more of a warning than an inevitable sense of fate? I think I've always referred to them as a sense of guidance, not the ultimate truth. I think taking any form of divination as the ultimate truth is very detrimental. I don't know if you remember Hannah Fernando from season 1, but she had a psychic tell her that her father was going to die during a tarot reading, which just seemed so remarkably not only unprofessional, but just like morally and ethically so wrong. Because why would you tell someone that? Why would you ever tell someone that their father is going to pass away, especially if there's not any known history with you and that person, any health risks? That wasn't even the thing she was asking about. And I don't know, I guess it's different for everyone, but as someone who does readings, even if there was a message that someone close to them might pass on, I feel like that's still their own burden to bear, because all death comes and affects everyone differently. But feeling the dread and fear that someone is ultimately going to die within a specific amount of time would change the trajectory of my whole life. And let's, knock on wood here, but luckily the time frame that she gave has come and gone, and he's okay, so that's great. But she lived with that fear. So people who are seeking guidance from diviners and people who are using divination as a tool, I think can be very abusive and can be very morally and ethically sketchy. So this is also just a reminder that be careful. Remember who and where you're getting your readings from is important, and you should make sure to do your research beforehand. And also remember not to take anything they say with extreme importance or value. Take everything with a grain of salt. Like I always say, take what serves you and leave what doesn't, And obviously, if you're someone who needs growth and self-improvement, sometimes some of the things you hear can be hard to hear, but it's all about how you use it to work on yourself and make choices in your own life. Our fate is in our own hands, or at least that's what I believe. Okay, let's get into a little historical context and research for divination, shall we? Yeah, one of the first recorded diviners, the Oracle of Delphi, 8th century BCE, one of the most famous diviners in history. The Pythia at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi would inhale sacred vapors from a chasm and deliver cryptic prophecies. Ancient rulers, including Alexander the Great, sought guidance from her. So, I have to say, definitely inhaling sacred vapors, I feel like would give anyone visions, right? Like, what are these vapors? Where are they coming from? What part of the earth? Are they herbs? You know what I'm saying? But hey, the Oracle of Delphi, go you. It sounds like she definitely profited off of these kings and had some very accurate messages. So very cool. Next, Roman augury and haruspicy. Just guessing with that one there. But augurs interpreted the flight patterns of birds to determine the will of the gods. While, here we go again, haruspices. I have the internet in front of me. I can find this out right now, and I will. Haruspices. That's what the internet told me. Haruspices, Roman augury and haruspices. There we go. Anyway, haruspices examined the entrails of sacrificed animals for omens. So that's very cool, using animals, the flight pattern of birds, to determine the will of the gods, and, looking at their entrails that they sacrificed for these omens. I have to say, I don't know the accuracy of that as a form of divination, as much as any of these are accurate, right? But I'm just going to pick these apart a little bit because I think it's interesting and I think it's fun. But I will say, flight patterns of birds are, determined by frickin' the seasons and weather patterns and all kinds of things. So I feel like in today's society, it would be a little harder to try to examine that as a will of the gods. But, we all read into things and believe the things that bring us comfort. But that is an interesting one. The next one, this says Chinese Qing, 1000 BCE to present, that this ancient divination system uses a combination of 64 hexagrams to provide insight into the present and future. It remains popular today in Taoist and New Age circles. I have never heard of this. So again, you live and you learn. I'm going to do a quick search of this because I want to see. So this is very cool. Chinese Qing likely refers to the Qing, also known as the Book of Changes. It's an ancient Chinese divination text and philosophical work created around potentially the Qing dynasty. Qing is traditionally consulted by performing a divination ritual involving yarrow stalks, which results in a hexagon. The hexagons are then interpreted to provide guidance or insight into a given situation. So hey, if you know about this, will you, reach out, because this is one I've never heard about until doing some research for this episode, and I'm very interested. So yeah, reach out if you know about it. Next, we're getting into tarot cards, 15th century to present. Originally used as a card game in Renaissance Europe, tarot only became associated with fortune telling in the 18th century. The Rider-Waite deck, made in 1909, popularized the modern imagery of tarot, which I'm sure you can visualize when you think of that classic, most popular tarot deck with the imagery of, the kind of artsy graphic swords and all of that. That is that Rider-Waite deck. And what's so cool about tarot is that now it's kind of transformed into something that is been so personalized that so many different people and artists and creators have made and use other decks that are like, oracle cards based with different design and, nature. And I mean, you can find a tarot deck theme with almost anything. I found dog tarot decks. I found cheese tarot decks. I mean, the sky's the limit with these things, which I think personally is cool. You can find what you connect with, find what you like, especially again when you are using these for sort of a therapeutic little kick in the pants spiritually and you need some guidance or help of decision making. The next one, scrying, 16th century. Nostradamus was said to have used a black mirror or a bowl of water to receive prophetic visions. Other methods of scrying include crystal balls and fire gazing. Now, scrying is so interesting to me. Like, it's something I feel like I want to get more into, but I've also heard a lot of practitioners essentially say like, no, it gets dangerous, it's bad, it's scary. And I feel like with anything that, you choose to practice, you have to use it in a way that serves you and your best self. And depending on your intentions can be good or bad, but I don't know. This is also something that I want to learn more about. I have had friends who owned black scrying mirrors and crystal balls. And I remember the first time, I think I was 14, and I was at my friend's house who had a very large crystal ball, and I was gazing into it, and I started to see, I don't know how to explain it, stuff that wasn't there, It's like almost a shot of purple, and then what looked like a flame or a thing of fire, what almost looked like a wing of a feather, and then I heard my friend saying, Courtney, stop looking at that. And I was like, why? Why is this? Like, what is this? Like, it's just like a crystal ball? Like, I'd never been around that stuff. I was like between 8th grade and freshman year. And he was like, yeah, you don't need that. That's not for you. Don't look into that. I was like, okay. But I would be curious now, thinking about it as I'm almost 31, if I could kind of tune in and pop into something there. So also, hey, if you're someone who uses a crystal ball or a scrying mirror or water or fire to help with your divination practice, I want to hear about it. Please let me know. There are multiple other forms of divination, including readings with runes, sort of carved out pieces of wood that stem back to the Viking ages, as well as reading bones, using animal bones or human bones, and tossing them in a specific manner to reveal a message or foretell what could be coming. Also reading tea leaves, looking at the images and shapes that the leaves of the tea leaf in the cup after the person has finished drinking them can result in a message, right, or a reading. And there are a lot of other forms as well. Like so many things with these early episodes, I'm just scratching the surface, and I'm so excited to hopefully meet some people out there who use these different kinds and forms of divinations in regular daily life. Or maybe you're just like a teacher and you know about this stuff. I want to talk to you, so please reach out if you practice this or if you know about this. So now let's get into some reported experiences and theories. The first one I have here is Jeane Dixon's presidential prophecy in 1963. This American psychic allegedly predicted JFK's assassination years before it happened. Some claim she was right, but skeptics argue she made many vague predictions. This is an article from the LA Times, January 26, 1997. Jeane L. Dixon, psychic, predicted JFK's death, where she goes on to say, I was always psychic. She said she knew at an early age that she had a special gift. She had long impressed family and friends with her penchant for making predictions. She did not reach prominence until 1963 with her prophecy about President Kennedy. Dixon had been quoted in Parade magazine in 1956 as saying that a Democratic president elected in 1960, whom she described as a tall young man with blue eyes and thick brown hair, would die in office. Dixon said that she had actually told the magazine that the president would be assassinated, but they refused to publish it. Though she became the nation's best-known psychic, sometimes called the seeress of Washington, skeptics abounded, arguing that her predictions were often vague and hard to verify because they were frequently told privately to friends or made about public figures who had died before the predictions were revealed, and often she was plain wrong, as when she predicted that World War III would break out in 1958 and that the Russians would be the first to land a man on the moon. All that's very interesting, though, right? I think what's so cool about talking to skeptics is that they are so quick to look for rationale and logic, right? Because anything that is unknown is not only unsettling for humans, but it's frightening, right? Why should she have known? How could she have known? She only tells family or friends or this or that or yappa da da. And I'm sure there are tons of other polarizing views about this person, Jean Dixon. But, I don't classify myself as a psychic. I don't get impending doom messages very clearly, very often. But, I do know a lot of people that are, and they can. And it's, I think that's the thing about psychics, right? Is that they have good days and they have bad days, just like we all do with whatever job or profession or talent that we have or skill set that we have. Some days you just, point is, some days you have bad days in any situation, right? So the quick, point to, oh, well, she said World War III would start in 1958. It's like, maybe it would have. Who knows? Maybe one person slept in a little too late and the chain of events that, rippled from that made it so it didn't. The future is always changing. And that's why at the end of the day, using divination as a tool and looking for clear-cut, hard, serious answers about things, I think is not always healthy, because like I said in the beginning of this, things can always change and fate is in your own hands, especially if you know what might be coming. Now you have the tools to potentially change the outcome. The next thing I want to talk about is the ideomotor effect, right? Scientists explain pendulum, dowsing, Ouija boards, and automatic writing as an unconscious muscle movement rather than supernatural forces. I can see the argument for both sides absolutely, right? I have used dowsing rods to ask answers of spirits and to find things in a house that I have lost, and it has worked. But with the ideomotor effect, let me explain what that is. The internet defines it as a psychological phenomenon, explains seemingly involuntary movements like those associated with pendulum, dowsing, Ouija boards, and automatic writing as unconscious muscle movements rather than supernatural forces. But, it's where basically a person is choosing to make these movements or unconsciously making these movements in response to a thought or expectation. These movements can be very small and may feel involuntary or automatic, but ultimately it's us involuntarily moving these with our own bias or hope. So I feel like that's why with Ouija boards, sometimes everyone is moving and it feels like it's a spirit for sure, right? And I'm not doubting the validity of Ouija boards at all. I think there is absolutely truth and they do act as portals. And, how many cases and occurrences do we all know of someone who did one once and experienced something so profoundly terrifying that changed their lives forever? I mean, I do. I know a couple. We're going to be doing an episode on Ouija boards, actually, so I'll save this topic more for that episode. But, automatic writing, same thing. You're looking for answers. You're giving someone a reading. Your hand is moving. And I feel like with divination, right, here's the psychological aspect at the end of the day. Here's my take on it. If someone is paying you for a service, whether it is reaching out to a loved one from beyond, looking for guidance or answers about a situation, as the person who's giving the service, if you're not getting anything, especially if it's not like a traditional tarot reading or a reading with runes or something tangible or physical, if it is someone sitting in front of you, closing their eyes and trying to tune in, sometimes you just don't get anything. So then what happens, right? You have a paying customer who's disappointed, and I think this is where the emotional abuse can come in, because you can decide whatever or whoever is coming through and giving a message to them. And sometimes is this profoundly healing and something that that person might need? Whether it is true or not coming from a spirit, I think yes. But is it up to that person to make that choice of what that person needs? I don't know. Personally, for me, no. If I don't get something, or something isn't coming through, or it's not making sense, that's what I say. It's like, hey, if I'm getting a message from someone for you, I'm gonna pass it on. Otherwise, if the room is empty and it's just us in it, I'm not gonna go out of my way to tell you what you want to hear, because I personally don't think that that is healthy. Anyway, let me get off my little soapbox and continue on here with some research, all right?
Oh, hey there, listeners. Courtney here with Jaunty Haunts. Sorry to interrupt this paid programming, JK, this programming, to recommend some podcasts that you should listen to and that you should check out. These are creators who I have done some interviews with and spoken with, and their shows are awesome. So, first show is the Red Treehouse podcast. This is your official invitation to join Will in the Red Treehouse, where he'll tell you the creepiest, eeriest, and most terrifying tales to keep you up at night. And along the way, you'll be challenged to consider what you believe. Does the paranormal and supernatural really exist, or is it a figment of an overactive imagination? I mean, we know what I think, but episodes release twice each week and can be found wherever you stream podcasts. It's a scary world out there. Let's explore it together in the Red Treehouse. So guys, check out the Red Treehouse podcast. Another one is Arcane Carolinas. Check out Arcane Carolinas for an informed but fun-spirited look at the verifiable history and science behind stories about ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and plain old weird stuff. Their research methods have turned up enough surprising information about the origins of lore that the Arcane Carolinas books have been preserved in state archival libraries. Arcane Carolinas is available on all major podcast services. Do you question reality? Are you drawn to UFOs, time slips, premonitions, or the mysteries of consciousness? Then you need to check out the Close Encounters Club podcast. Hosted by Justin Gearhart, a skeptic with an open mind, Close Encounter Club features real people sharing their encounters with the unexplainable. He's joined by his producer Josh, chiming in from Australia with his own curious takes. They also bring on scientists and experts who are actually trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So, if you've ever stared at the sky and felt like something was staring back, this one's for you. Search Close Encounter Club wherever you get your podcasts. Tell them Jaunty sent you. A couple other shout outs to the Opening Kill podcast. If you are a horror movie fan, you have got to listen to the Opening Kill podcast. Also, guys, Hidden in the Shadows podcast, another great one. And just for funsies, just to shout it out there, maybe they'll hear one day, maybe I'll meet them, I don't know. My favorite all-time fun, spooky paranormal podcasts are, of course, Spooked by Snap Judgment, A Funny Feeling podcast with Betsy and Marcy, and Ghosted by Roz Hernandez. So just some fun recommendations for you guys. I love to boost and promote other podcasts that I resonate with. If you want a shout out, please reach out. I'd love to spread the word. Anyway, back to the show. All right, we also have our first listener story for season 2. This comes to us from listener Pixie on TikTok. Pixie says, "There was one night when I was still living in Kansas City where my then partner and I were in this apartment, and I had a little bit of spooky experience, but nothing major with spirits. But we were working opposite work schedules, so he had off that day and I worked an overnight schedule. I get up, go to the shower, get ready, go into work, and when I walked back to our room, I didn't see anything. I remember closing the door and turning towards the back wall of our bedroom, and the way the bedroom was set up was that there were windows on either side of that wall, but I couldn't see anything, and I could tell that there was a shadow right in front of me, like a person was standing 3 inches from my face. I let out a scream and turned on the lights and saw the window with the light coming through it, and that my boyfriend was laying in the bed. He sits up and asks me what's wrong, and I barely explain what happened. I saw that shadow a couple more times in that apartment, but it was never that close to me again." Ooh, thanks for sharing, Pixie. Oh my gosh, that's so weird. There was just like a full shadow presence right in front of your face, it sounds like. Oh my gosh. Let me know if that's ever happened again, because that's not great. That is not great. But it sounds like that was kind of a one-time thing in that apartment only. So hopefully that's the case, and hopefully you have not run into that shadow figure again. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate you. Please send more in, and yeah, listeners, send in your stories. I'd love to read them.
So is it always going to be, 100% effective? Using a pendulum for yes or no answers, using dowsing rods for yes or no answers, or to find lost objects in your house, using Ouija boards to get messages from the other side, using automatic writing. No, the answer is no. It's not always going to be 100% effective, because sometimes we will give ourselves or others the answers that we want to hear. Will he ask me out? You're using a pendulum. The littlest movement, oh, it's a circle, that's yes, or oh, it's an X, that's no, but hey, it made us excited. We can move on about our day. I think the important thing with these tools for divination is if you are using them for yourself, okay, great. You can make yourself feel better. You can cheer yourself up. If you're charging someone, I'm getting into too much moral stuff. Let me just stick to my research here. Moving on. Some fun pop culture references. Professor Trelawney was listed, represents the trope of the unreliable seer, though she delivers true prophecies unknowingly. Movies like The Gift, 2000, a psychic woman's visions help solve a murder. Real-life psychic detectives. Mediums have been consulted in cases like the 1970s murder of Sarah Rivette, though law enforcement still remains skeptical. Which brings me to the thought and the idea of, yeah, this is true. This is a real thing, that police forces will hire mediums and psychics to help solve cases. And all I can wonder is, like, how do they find these people? We're going to be doing an episode coming up about telepathy, psychic, and mediumship with government usage. So we're going to get more into this because I am very curious about it. And same as all these topics, guys, if you know about this, let me know, because I am very curious. It's like, yeah, how accurate do you have to be to get a job working for the police, So here are some questions to explore. Can divination be psychological rather than supernatural? For me, the answer is yes. I think it can be psychological rather than supernatural, especially nowadays when there's so much craziness happening in the world. I know for me, it brings such a comfort and excitement to feel like there is some sort of hope or some other knowledge or opinion, whether it's from my spirit guides or my ancestors, or honestly just the deck of cards being an inanimate object in front of me like a game, can bring kind of hope. So yeah, I think it absolutely can be psychological rather than supernatural. I also think that it is a great blend of the two, depending on what you're looking for, what the circumstances are, what the question is, and what you've got going on with your, spiritual team. My next question is, have you ever experienced an accurate reading, and was it a coincidence? Listeners, have you ever experienced an accurate reading? And was it ultimately a coincidence? Did things kind of work out time-wise that you think, well, I don't know? Or was it like, oh no, this is 100% accurate. This psychic knew everything before, I even had a chance? Because there are, another pop culture reference like, what's his name? Tyler Henry, and of course, Long Island Medium, these people who have undeniable gifts, in my opinion. I don't think there's any coincidence there. I will talk about a reading that I gave once that felt really wrong at the time, but turned out to be right. I think it's kind of funny. I had a friend reach out for a tarot reading virtually, and at the time, this friend was going through some trouble in her love life. She had put in a lot of time, effort, and energy into finding a partner who could match her, and she's amazing, and so she deserves someone great. And the cards were basically like, there's someone coming. He's going to be great. It's going to be like sooner than you think, but just know when the time comes, like go all in 100%. It's the right one. It's going to happen. And so basically she was kind of talking to a guy at the time, and she's like, okay, that was my answer. That's what I needed. Now I'm going to go for it. This guy turned out to be the worst. And she was reaching out and she was like, he's crazy. He lives with his mom. Like, he didn't tell me. He's super controlling. Like, your reading was totally wrong. Da 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 da. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like, I was wrong. I don't know. I guess it happens sometimes, but like, fuck, I'm sorry, man. You know, come to find out, like within 3 months or something, she met the love of her life, who she had kind of known before, which also the cards alluded to, that like you already know him, but he's not who you think, which is why she thought like, well, there's that guy at the bar, but I haven't really pictured him as romantic. So that's what she went for. Turned out to be kind of more of a friend she had had for a little while. And long story short, they're getting married in November. And so I was the first to tell her, so can we say it's been 3 years now? Like, my reading was right? And she's like, yeah, it was right. Sometimes there's just some obstacles, some roadblocks in the way, but everything else the reading said, I have to say, it was pretty spot on. The next question is, why does divination exist in nearly every culture? I don't know, right? It's kind of an interesting thought. I think it's kind of a mix as well, like we talked about earlier, right? Of is it psychological or supernatural? I think it is a mix of both. I think it's one thing to receive messages supernaturally and be the person who is sort of a prophet, you know, a soothsayer, the oracle, who can say, hey, I saw this thing, it's going to happen. And then boom, the thing happens. Well, hey, now you're a hero or something of value or a way to help communities if something bad is going to, you know, happen. Also, I think it is psychological, right? Of, again, the baseline of why all of this is spooky, scary, and why this is kind of more of a niche thing that people don't like to talk about when it comes to paranormal is that it is unknown. There is so much that we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know if there's going to be an earthquake, if there's going to be a tsunami, if there's going to be a fire. And so I think there is a comfort to, even if it is psychological, right? Being someone or counting on someone or using tools of divination to reassure ourselves that even subconsciously, we feel like we know. We feel like we are in control of the situation, even when maybe we aren't at all. So long of the short, I think that is why divination exists in nearly every culture, because as far back as the beginning of time, I don't think majority of people could see into the future. And I think the small few that could maybe weren't even open about it because, again, we don't want to look crazy because that others us. And even people who couldn't see the future, who maybe did want to feel special or recognized, knew that it could bring a sense of value and worth to them. So they would, well, maybe make it up, you know? So anyway, why do you guys think? Feel free to write in. Send me a message. Send me a recording of all of these divination questions. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So lastly, let's talk about it. I've been on my soapbox a little bit. I want to talk about how divination can be abusive, how there is a darker side to this, right? Especially in today's society and with everything we have going on virtually. So I did a little bit of research and found some context as to how people get taken advantage of and choose to take advantage of people when it comes to divination. So the first is vulnerability exploitation. Studies suggest that people in distress, such as those grieving a lost loved one, facing a financial hardship, are more susceptible to suggestions and manipulation. Many psychics and diviners exploit this by claiming to offer closure, hope, or solutions. I saw this all the time in Los Angeles, unfortunately, and I'm sure it's everywhere, right? I see all the time houses, buildings, places that have that glowing hand, the famous, psychic sign. And I'm not at all trying to take away anyone's credibility, right? Of course, these folks could have natural psychic abilities, but I think a lot of them do, unfortunately, prey on people who are in these vulnerable situations to take money, offering and claiming to give them things that you can't even begin to promise to another person. It takes time and therapy and, other methods of healing. And sometimes, hey, it can help, right? Sometimes it absolutely can help when someone is asking to speak to someone who they've lost, and whether it's true or not, a psychic or a medium gives them a message. Sometimes that does help with closure. And if that is something that you can afford to do, that is helpful for you or someone then, I'm not going to chastise them. I'm not going to belittle anyone. I think we should all encourage people to get help in a way that makes sense for them. But it is the people who usually don't have money that these people will prey on, so that they are almost like a gambling debt. Like they give and they give and they give. So anyway, the next thing is the cold reading effect. Psychological research into cold reading techniques, examples of the Forer effect, the Barnum statements. This shows that people interpret vague statements as highly personal, creating an illusion of supernatural insight. This can manipulate emotionally vulnerable individuals into dependency, thinking someone has godlike powers when they're just kind of offering and throwing out vague statements that you can connect with. And this was something that was a new concept for me that I just kind of learned a couple of years ago. My boyfriend actually told me about it because I had fell for it. Luckily it wasn't a paid thing, but we were watching something and I said, that's crazy. He's really nailing it or something. And my boyfriend was like, no, he's using a cold reading method. And I'm like, what's that? He told me about it and I was like, oh, fuck. You think more into it. And it's true, who in here has a grandmother that's passed? Okay, well, probably 50% of the people sitting there, depending on how old they are, because old people die, right? Was her name Rose or Violet? Okay, what are the common ages and names? It's like there are so many ways to, again, take advantage of people by just pure process of elimination. So again, look out for that. Financial predation, we talked about that a little bit, but there are many documented cases that show psychics charging exorbitant fees, sometimes thousands of dollars, by convincing clients they are cursed, need spiritual cleansing, or must purchase expensive rituals to remove negativity. Again, I cannot state enough how common this was in Los Angeles. Oh, well, you have a lot of darkness on you and, I can see it. And if you just come once a week for 6 weeks, we can totally take care of this. It's only $80 a session. Only $80 a session? I mean, my God, and they instill the fear of this into you, right? So you feel like, well, I can't see it energetically and they can. Again, they have a power that I don't have. And so now it's dangerous. And now all of a sudden you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even just like hundreds of dollars, right? That's a lot for me right now. Spending more than $100 on someone to do something for you that maybe wasn't even really affecting you before you met this person. So always be aware of people who are asking for money, threatening you, making you feel scared or dependent on them to remove or change or work on this thing energetically. Because odds are 100% of the time, well, maybe, I don't know, like 90% of the time, I don't know, you can do it on your own, right? Through self-work, through prayer, through meditation, through energy work. Like you can do this on your own. You don't have to pay someone. So next is false hope and emotional manipulation. Claims of contacting deceased loved ones can create a cycle of dependency where grieving individuals return for repeated sessions, reinforcing the illusion rather than allowing real healing, right? So again, at the beginning of this, I said, hey, if it really helps someone, maybe that's needed, okay? But the truth of the matter is, it's not allowing real healing. We have to stick to these sort of grounded human behaviors and practices when it comes to grief. We can always think that supernatural solutions or messages or guidance is going to be the thing that makes it better at the end of the day. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't help, but you have to get through this on your own and heal. And any message from a relative that happens to come through for you, let that be an incredible gift, but not something you expect. That's my advice on that. Legal cases and scams. Multiple high-profile legal cases have shown how fraudulent psychics and tarot readers have taken advantage of people, sometimes stealing life savings through psychological coercion. This can even come down to hypnotism. Imagine how vulnerable you are energetically and psychically when you're giving yourself over to somebody who maybe does have knowledge or practice in controlling someone else's mind, whether it be through, emotional manipulation, woo-woo shit of like taking advantage of your psyche or your energy. Again, just be really careful, guys. And again, I'm not trying to say all of this to like scare you out of seeking, forms of divination. I'm just trying to remind everybody that there is a darker side to this. And I mean, God knows, like with Instagram and TikTok and the internet, you can throw a stone and hit 20 psychics, right? And again, there are some amazing people out there who do great work. And I'm always looking for people who are super incredibly talented and work well. And I'm always going to boost them up on my pages when I get the chance to. But I just also really want everybody to take caution before giving over your personal money and finances to people who claim they can help you when they don't even know what your problem is yet, right? So keeping that in mind. Almost to the end of these warnings, just want to make note of that. Mental health impacts. Psychologists warn that reliance on psychics can prevent individuals from seeking genuine mental health support, leaving them in cycles of anxiety, depression, and avoidance of real-life solutions. Constantly turning to supernatural advice or advice of what could be, what would be. I always have this rule for myself too with tarot readings. Is like I try to never do more than one a month for myself. And there are some people I know who pull like a single card every day, like a little bit of guidance, which is like great. Again, do what serves you. I know if I'm asking for something or if I'm seeking more help than usual for myself, and I'm like, okay, well, let me do a reading. Let me ask. And it's like, well, didn't you ask about this like 10 days ago? And it's like, yeah, it's like probably hasn't changed. Or if it has, like, do you really think another reading is going to fix it? Or should you make some real life human decisions and like try to keep going at it from a different, direction or perspective? And, the answer is like, right, use your human tools, right? Because again, wow, what a way to increase and worsen anxiety and depression if you're not, dealing with those real life or seeking out real life solutions. Power of suggestion. This goes along with the cold reading topics I was talking about. Studies and suggestibility show that individuals seeking psychics often unknowingly provide information that is later fed back to them, reinforcing belief in the psychic's abilities and leading to further financial and emotional investment. So kind of like the cold reading, but if there's a psychic you see all the time and maybe you mention, well, I really want kids, but I don't know when. And the next time you go back, you say, well, I just met a guy, but I don't know. And then they say, well, he wants kids and, he wants them, or whatever, whatever situation, like reinforcing your dreams and goals that you've already fed to them. So, yeah. Next, religious and ethical concerns. Some argue that psychic practices prey upon spiritual beliefs, taking advantage of the deeply held convictions about fate, spirits, or afterlife to attract money or exert control. Yeah, simply stated. Next is addiction to readings. Like gambling, some individuals become addicted to psychic consultations, making repeated visits and spending money they cannot afford on advice that ultimately does not help them with their real-world problems. This is addictive, guys. It really can be. I have known people who kind of joke about it, but they'll say like, oh, well, I'm seeing someone this week and then I have someone next week because I didn't really like the first one. And ultimately, by the end of the month, I'm like, how much money are you spending on these psychics? They're like, oh, only like $350. $350. Oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like that's so crazy to me. Like that's so many groceries. that's bills, you know? And again, if that brings you comfort, that's great, but like that was a lesser month for that person. They usually go more, you know, but it's like, oh, well, you know, and these people aren't rich, you guys. These are people who at the time I was like working at Starbucks with, you know, like I know how much you're making. It sure as hell is not enough to have an extra $350 to be spending on answers to questions that you could figure out on your own. And again, this is all my opinion. You, do what makes you happy, but just be careful, be cautious, be aware. And the last one on my list here is fear-based tactics. Some psychics instill fear, such as claiming a curse, bad energy, or impending doom, pressuring clients to pay for unnecessary services to fix their problems. Don't be dependent on somebody to fix your problems. You've got to fix your problems on your own. Everybody needs help now and then, but not if it's going to literally cost you, right? Turn to a friend, turn to a loved one, turn to a doctor or somebody who can help you. There are plenty of free or low-cost services that can help you through problems in your life, especially mental health, grief, or emotional issues. There are services out there. So always do a Google for that. Suicide hotline, things like that, you know, before you turn and spend $600 to someone who claims to be a psychic. Okay, we're getting towards the end of this. This has been a good, fun discussion. It's, you know, it's got some dark stuff to it, but I hope that you guys appreciate a different perspective on this, especially from somebody who claims to see ghosts and who also does tarot readings, right? I think this is something in this time and age, and you know, personally and politically with what we have going on in our country right now, things are scary. And I think people are turning towards a lot of these divination tools a lot more frequently because we're trying to dig a way out of this spiritually. And I just want everybody to be super aware of what is out there. So yes. Anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is the scientific evaluation of divination, the accuracy and predictive power. So the first thing I've got here is scientists talking about a lack of empirical evidence for predictive accuracy. Just like ghosts, just like all kinds of paranormal things, there's always this lack of empirical evidence, right? So many things happen that we know are true. We witnessed it. But how do you explain it? How do you recreate it? You know, sometimes you just can't. So science is testing things over and over and over again. There is this lack of empirical evidence. Controlled experiments and debunking of psychic abilities. Over the years, controlled scientific studies have consistently failed to demonstrate that tarot, psychic readings, or other forms of divination can predict the future beyond random chance. Some other research I did talked about James Randi's $1 million paranormal challenge. This annoys me, but I'll read you what I read here. This offered a substantial reward to anyone who could demonstrate supernatural or psychic abilities under controlled conditions, despite thousands of applicants, including self-proclaimed psychics, astrologers, and tarot readers. Not a single one was able to pass the controlled tests. I've heard a lot of negative things about this person and about this challenge, including certain situations where psychics did pass the test and he found a way to contradict it, shut down the evidence, or basically state that it wasn't exactly what he wanted or thought or wasn't strong enough. So I think this guy just didn't want to pay people out $1 million. I think maybe this man just didn't have $1 million, but either way, not a fan of that. Lastly, this talks about Richard Wiseman, a psychologist specializing in deception and paranormal claims, has conducted extensive studies on psychic phenomena. In one study, psychics were asked to match personal details to anonymous participants using only their abilities. Their success rate was no better than chance, according to this person, Richard Wiseman. A statistical analysis of predictions. A study published in the Journal of Society for Psychic Research analyzed multiple cases of psychic predictions, including those made by high-profile psychics. The study found that the accuracy rate of psychic predictions was equivalent to random guessing. Vague predictions were often interpreted as correct. After the fact, a phenomenon known as retrospective validation, where people see a past prediction as accurate because they subconsciously mold it to fit real events. Another study in the Skeptical Inquirer examined psychic predictions in newspapers and found that their rate of success was no higher than it would be expected by chance. So now let's talk about psychological explanations for why divination seems to work. This is the Forer effect, Barnum statements here, first described by Bertram Forer in 1948. This psychological phenomenon explains why people accept vague or generalized statements as highly personal and accurate. Example, a tarot reader might say, "You are feeling uncertain about a major life decision and you're hoping for clarity." Almost anyone can relate to this statement at some point, but it feels personal to the listener. Cold reading techniques, as we talked about, general statements, fishing for information, and shotgunning, known as rapidly throwing out multiple guesses to see what sticks. Confirmation bias and selective memory. People tend to remember hits and forget misses, which reinforces the belief that a psychic or tarot reading was accurate. Example, if a psychic makes 10 vague predictions and one seems accurate, the person will focus on the one and ignore the incorrect ones. Cognitive bias and pattern recognition. Human brains are wired to find patterns and meaning in randomness. This is called apophenia. This is why random tarot card draws may seem to reflect someone's situations perfectly. They are interpreted subjectively. Now let's talk about the psychological and emotional benefits of divination. Despite lacking scientific backing as predictive tools, divination does offer some psychological and emotional benefits. Emotional support and stress reduction. Many people find comfort in tarot readings or psychic consultations during difficult times. Engaging in a ritual like a tarot reading can be soothing and create a sense of control over uncertainty, even if the advice is not truly predictive. Studies on placebo effects suggest that belief alone can create a sense of relief, reducing stress and anxiety. And with that, I want to state, this is all research that I've done, you guys, but this is kind of what I was saying, especially when you're doing it for yourself, right? If you're giving yourself a tarot reading, if you're meditating, if you're using runes, a mirror, scrying, looking into water, whatever form of divination that brings you comfort, especially when you're asking a question or about a situation for yourself, it can be really great, Self-reflection and clarity in decision-making. Tarot readings, astrology, and other divination methods often encourage people to contemplate their life situations deeply. Yeah, right? This thing that I thought was something little, these cards are making me read into a little bit, which, in a lot of situations can be really helpful. Really asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? How can I be better? How can I improve? Or, hey, that person is taking advantage of me. I am being taken advantage of. How can I be stronger? How can I protect myself, right? A 2013 study in the Paranormal Journal of Positive Psychology found that rituals, even if they are not based in scientific fact, can help people organize their thoughts and make decisions with more confidence. Example, a tarot reading may not predict the future, but it might help a person reflect on their current choices and emotional state. Next, social and cultural bonding, right? Divination practices have played a role in human societies for thousands of years, often acting as a means of bringing people together. Anthropologists such as Claude Levi-Strauss argue that rituals like fortune-telling serve a social function, helping individuals feel connected to a larger community. Group astrology readings or tarot sessions can serve as a bonding activity where people feel validated and heard. How fun is that? Have you been to birthday parties or, situations? I always at my Halloween parties, I'm like, hey, who wants a tarot reading? Are you comfortable with other people listening in or sitting in? Some people are, some people aren't. But it's fun. It's really fun to have people be like, yeah, I'm comfortable. And then you have people chiming in oh my God, it's talking about that guy, or it's talking about this, or oh my God, it's talking about your mom. And then we're all laughing or crying, or it really is a bonding moment. Next is grief counseling and the illusion of closure. We talked about this a lot. Some people find comfort in believing they are communicating with deceased loved ones through psychics or mediumship. While scientific studies have not validated these claims, researchers acknowledge that such experiences can be psychologically beneficial for some individuals dealing with loss. Spiritual exploration and personal meaning. Many use tarot, astrology, or divination as a personal spiritual tool rather than a predictive one. Some therapists and counselors even integrate symbolic tarot readings in therapy, not as supernatural predictions, but as a way to help clients explore emotions and life patterns. I love what this research is saying. I love what scientists and therapists and psychologists are finding a lot about this in terms of the positive, right? I'm glad we kind of got the negative out of the way, but now we're talking about this fun stuff, this yummy stuff of It really does help explore emotions and life patterns. So now, final verdict: science versus subjective experience. Scientific perspective says there's no empirical evidence. There are psychological effects like cold reading, cognitive biases, pattern recognition. Controlled studies show that divination results are no better than random chance. Potential benefits include stress reduction, self-reflection, a sense of control. If it's used in a healthy way, divination can encourage introspection and mindfulness. Community and social bonding aspects can have a positive and emotional effects. The potential harms: financial exploitation, emotional dependency, false hope, or avoidance of real-world solutions. So, while divination is not scientifically valid for predicting the future, it can serve as a psychological tool for self-reflection and emotional comfort when used responsibly. However, exploitation of vulnerable individuals remains a serious issue, making critical thinking and ethical boundaries essential when engaging in these practices. So guys, that's about it. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for season 2. This episode was obviously solo and very research heavy, but it was about something that means a lot to me because I've seen so many people get taken advantage of. I have been taken advantage of, and we are in kind of weird, funky, dark times, especially because so many people yearn for this peek behind the curtain of the veil or the other side, right? And divination tools feel like a very accessible and tangible way to get messages, see the future, kind of key in to something that maybe others can't see or experience. And as somebody, not to like be like, woo, ah, and like toot my own horn, but as somebody who does see spirits and get messages and have premonitions, relatively frequently, I can say like they're not always right, the spirits and the messages. And it's like not all that jazz. Use these things as tools to help yourself, like a little plant, right? Water yourself, help yourself grow, tend to your leaves, be honest with yourself about the stuff that's hard. Sometimes we have to work on ourselves. Sometimes we do things or we're stuck in patterns that only we have the power to change. But don't let people take advantage of you, okay? Not energetically and not financially. Be your best self. We're gonna get into so many spooky ghost stories this season. I've seen some crazy stuff in the last few months, you guys. I'll add to this because I think it's going to be something to look forward to for the listener. But I mentioned at the end of last season, I started medication. I got diagnosed with OCD, and I've got general anxiety and depression. And now I'm on Lexapro. This is something I feel very confident and comfortable being open about because it has changed my life and been very validating because I thought for so long, maybe I'm not seeing spirits, right? Maybe I am just dealing with a mental illness. And I have seen spirits more clearly than I have in my entire life since being on the medication, just as if they were people standing next to me. I think because my brain is more quiet, I can, essentially cut through the bullshit of what my own brain was doing to me before, detrimentally. And I'm just seeing these things, you guys. So it's going to be a fun journey to tell you about the stuff I've been seeing. Tune in next week. We've got some fun guests coming up and some fun stories coming up. If you guys want to hear any specific topics, any themes, you want to share a story, you have any guests you want to hear, shout it out. Hit us up on all the places I've said. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful. Tell your friends to tune in. Happy springtime. Enjoy yourself. And as always, stay spooky, ghoul friends. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Remember, you are not alone if you've ever heard a bump in the night or caught something out of the corner of your eye. There are countless others who experience things they can't explain. And this podcast is your safe place to listen and share. Also, I want to remind everyone that this show is for entertainment purposes. I am not a professional paranormal investigator. I did not go to school to study this. I can only speak about my firsthand experiences. And with that, I'd love to mark the importance of spiritual inclusion. Your thoughts, ideas, and theories about the other side are welcome. And we know that so much of our common knowledge and perception about the paranormal stems from historical and cultural experiences. So we are open to your knowledge and understanding of things that we may be ignorant about or not fully understand. Let's learn and grow together. Stay spooky, and we'll see you next time. Hey ghoul friends, got a spooky story to share? Well, I want to hear about your haunts. Whether you've seen a ghost or something unexplainable, send your supernatural experiences to us at jauntyhaunts@gmail.com. That's JAUNTYHAUNTS@gmail.com. Or DM us on Instagram at JauntyHauntsPod. That's JauntyHauntsPod. You can also find us on TikTok and YouTube under Jaunty Haunts Podcast. I want to hear from you.